Sabbath School, Lesson 4, Q3 2026, Sin in the Church. Monday, July 20th. 1. What is Monday's lesson about? It's about dealing with scandals. Dealing with matters of sexuality is always hard. It was hard for Paul, and it is for us too. In these situations, we must be faithful to Scripture and address the issue with prayer and love, never forgetting that our goal is restoration, not destruction. The lesson revisits 1 Corinthians 5, 1-13 to ask a practical question. How does Paul actually tell the church to handle this scandal, and what can we learn from his approach today? 2. How does Paul tell the church to deal with the situation in 1 Corinthians 5? Paul makes it clear in 1 Corinthians 5 that sexual scandals require church discipline, not silence or pride. He says the incestuous man should be removed. 1 Corinthians 5:2. Judged. 1 Corinthians 5:3. Delivered to Satan. 1 Corinthians 5:5. And put away. 1 Corinthians 5:13. The members were told not to associate with him. 1 Corinthians 5:9, 11. Nor even to eat with such a one. 1 Corinthians 5:11. Paul's language may sound offensive to modern ears, but it must be understood in its historical context. And remember, he was dealing with a flagrant, unrepentant, sinful lifestyle, not an occasional stumble. 3. What does "let him be removed from among you" mean? This expression, 1 Corinthians 5:2, also 1 Corinthians 5:13, refers to church discipline, a formal congregational response, rather than a private rebuke. Paul's language may sound strong to modern ears, but it must be understood in its historical context. And remember, he was dealing with a flagrant, sinful lifestyle that the church was proudly tolerating. In extreme situations like this, strong language is often necessary to shake a congregation out of complacency. 4. What does "deliver this man to Satan" mean? This man did not choose to stay under God's protection by living in daily obedience to him. So by his own choice, he would become vulnerable to Satan's influence and consequences. This expression, 1 Corinthians 5:5, can simply mean something like, "let him reap the fruit of his own decisions," rather than a literal curse pronounced by the church. Why were church members told not to associate or not even to eat with him? Close association with sexually immoral people was considered dangerous because they might influence others in the church to imitate their conduct. 1 Corinthians 5:9, 11. In ancient times, sharing a meal was a sign of fellowship and could mean sharing values too, not merely convenience. We are all susceptible to the influences around us, whether we like to admit it or not, and we need to protect ourselves the best we can, especially when dealing with something like this. 6. What did Paul mean by "that his spirit may be saved"? Church discipline is meant to be rehabilitative in intent, not merely punitive. It intends to bring sinners back to their senses and lead them to abandon their sinful lifestyle so their spirit can ultimately be saved. This is possibly what Paul meant by destruction of the flesh, 1 Corinthians 5:5, allowing the natural, painful consequences of sin to do their work. It is even possible that this same man is the repentant man Paul later refers to in 2 Corinthians 2, 5-10, showing that discipline, rightly applied, can lead to genuine restoration. What is the ultimate purpose of church discipline? Church discipline reaches its true God-intended purpose only when the erring member repents and is reintegrated into church fellowship. Paul's strong words were never about rejection for its own sake, but about restoration, protecting the church's witness and spiritual health, while still hoping and working for the sinner to be won back to Christ. Discipline without love becomes cruelty, but love without discipline becomes complicity, and Paul refused to settle for either extreme.